Hey there, Manny Garza here. I'm on staff at Stone here, and I'm here with my good friend Noe Barrera.
Hey.
SLS student, helps a lot down in Kids World, makes it awesome down there.
Kids World, shout out to all the cheerians out there.
And today we're talking about 1 Samuel 16 and 17, and just a little bit of a recap. We start, chapter 16, where God is asking Samuel, how long are you going to grieve Saul? And so Samuel has kind of seen the rise and the fall of Saul. And you kind of wanted to say something there?
Yeah, right around this part, Samuel's in a bit of a funk because he's seen Saul begin as a normal guy, and then he becomes king, and he does what he does, and then eventually Saul kind of falls off and starts turning away from the things of God. And Samuel's got so much invested in Saul, I think that it kind of brings him down to see how far Saul has actually fallen by this time.
And he's really grieving Saul. And I think we were kind of chatting a little bit, and we really kind of see, and we've kind of pulled out a few things just from this part of the passage, to where a lot of the times us as humans, we can get so caught up, we can we can get obsessed over our current situation, that it's hard for us to see the bigger picture. And God is telling Samuel, how long are you going to grieve Saul? I got things for you to do. I've got another king for you to anoint. And so
we got somebody else rolled up the sleeve here, ready to go.
And so God tells him to go to this land in Bethlehem and talk to Jesse, right? And so he goes to talk to Jesse and says, hey, show me your sons. God has kind of told me to come over here and anoint a king, and he told me to come and check out your sons. And
one of the things that I kind of took from this part of the scriptures is God actually chose the least likely of the sons, and even Jesse, the David's dad, didn't think David had what it took, because he took all his other sons, his oldest sons, and
who were good looking,
tall, strapping, good looking young men, kind of like ourselves here.
Yeah, exactly.
And the whole time Saul's waiting to hear from God. Oh, this is the guy. Yeah. But nope, and nope. Until we reached a point where Saul asked Jesse, do you have any more sons? God hasn't told me anything yet.
Yeah.
And Jesse's like, well, I have my youngest son, he's still tending sheep out in the fields and stuff. So him, and lo and behold, God chose the least likely, which was King David, another strapping, healthy, great looking guy like us,
Exactly. And I think Samuel, when he saw David come by, David must have been super young, teenager probably at this point. And God told him, that's him, anoint him. And I would guess that Samuel in this moment is like, man, are you sure, God? Like, wow, he's super young. He's got great features. He's handsome. But wow, he's super young. And so obviously this is kind of the end of 16, where Samuel anoints David in front of his brothers and his family, and then bounces. He leaves. And then we come into chapter 17, where it's the huge, famous story of David and Goliath. And what talk to us, what happens in that story?
Well, David comes in, and as he's coming in, fighting is the furthest thing from David's mind. He was coming to drop off some cheese, maybe even some bread.
To his brothers,
that were in the battle. And David sees, Goliath talking that jazz, hey, I defy your armies, and somebody fight me. Who you guys got?
Yeah. Well, and it says that he came out every morning and did that, and then nobody would fight him.
Nobody would fight him. And there's just the boldness, the audacity that Goliath had to just straight up say, I defy you guys. Whatever you guys are about, I'm about the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. And now I will say this. I read somewhere that he was 9 feet, 9 inches tall. Right, and there's a couple of measurements in the Bible there that kind of equate to that. So if you saw a 10-foot person, giant, you'd be a little scared. Not you,
not me.
so David kind of sees that one day delivering that cheese, and walk us through that.
So David, he says, well, who is this guy that's defying the Lord's army? Nobody. I'm assuming that David looked around and said, I'll fight this guy. David's by this time, David's taking out a bear. He's taking out a lion at least, and those are not some animals I want to mess with either, you know. But just I guess God had put in David a boldness, a fearlessness. We mentioned, you know, that he's got the ability. He can do this, you know, and I think David took that into battle. One of the things we pointed out to also was when David went in, he didn't go in ready for battle. He just went in as himself with the things that God gave him. His knowledge about, or his ability to use a sling was something he already had. You know, choosing the proper stones, you know, smooth stones that are going to glide through the air, you know, create the biggest impact or whatever. And just his own knowledge. And reading on into the passage or into the scriptures, it says that King Saul actually gave his own armor to David. And, you know, his breastplate, his helmet, his own sword and stuff. And you got to remember, if this was for King Saul, this was armor and swords that was fit for a king. You know, this was the top of the line.
Super heavy, super thick.
Top of the line stuff for that time. But that was not for David. That's not what God gave David. God gave David his knowledge, his ability to use that sling, his knowledge of what were the proper stones. And that's what David used to slay Goliath. Was what God gave him. Not even though he had at his own disposal the best armor, the best swords, that wasn't for him. That's not what God gave him. God gave him, you know, his own ability.
And that's kind of, and you can have a bunch of different angles and pull out a bunch of different things from David and Goliath, obviously. But what we've mostly pulled out is that God's going to prepare you for the battles that you have ahead in your life. And obviously we see that in this passage. And obviously we see that God gave David a boldness and a fearlessness that prepared him to slay Goliath. So yeah, that's kind of our few thoughts from today. And we pray that God kind of enlightens you with some thoughts for these passages as well. Have a great day, and I hope the book has been going great for you.
Go kill your own giants.
That's right.